What would you do if every time you walked into your own home, it felt like stepping into a battlefield? That was my reality. My name is Arjun. I'm 21, and I live in India. On the outside, my family looks perfectly normal. We live in a modest two-story house painted pale yellow, with bougainvillea climbing up the walls and neighbors who smile politely every morning. But inside those walls, something darker was always brewing. I'll never forget the mornings. The day always started with the smell of chai simmering in the kitchen. My mom, Anita, would already be awake at 5 a.m., moving quietly around the house, folding laundry, arranging my father's files, preparing his tiffin. The sound of metal spoons against steel plates, the hiss of the pressure cooker, those became the soundtrack of my childhood. Meanwhile, my father, Rajesh, sat in the living room, scrolling endlessly on his phone, sipping his tea without once looking at her. His shirt pressed, his shoes polished by her hands, his briefcase ready on the table. And yet, every single morning, the peace shattered. "Why is this tea so watery? Can't you get it right, even once?" He'd snap, slamming the cup onto the table so hard I thought it would crack. Mom would lower her head, whisper a soft sorry, and rush back to the kitchen. I would freeze. My heart would pound so loudly I could barely hear the next insult. And there were always more. "Did you even iron my shirt properly? Look at this crease." Useless. It didn't matter if everything was perfect. He always found something wrong. Always. At first, when I was a kid, I thought maybe this was normal. Maybe all fathers talked like this. But as I grew older, went to college, met other families, I realized, no, this wasn't normal. This was control. And yet, here's the contradiction that confused me the most. When I once asked Mom why she let him speak to her that way, she defended him. "He's just stressed before work, Arjun. Don't take it seriously." Seriously? The man tears her down every day before the sun is even up, and she tells me not to take it seriously. That answer haunted me. The more I stayed at home, the heavier it felt. The house wasn't just a home, it was a cage. A cage built on unspoken rules, patriarchy, and silence. And here's the part one never told anyone. I started blaming myself. Every time Dad shouted, my body froze. I didn't fight back, I didn't speak up. I just sat there, paralyzed. Later, when I tried to focus on my art assignments, all I could hear was his voice. Useless. Worthless. Can't even do this one thing right. The words weren't meant for me, but somehow, they stuck to me anyway. I'd sit in my tiny room, sketchbook open, pencil in hand, staring at the blank page. Nothing came. No creativity, no inspiration. Just silence and his echo in my head. And then one morning, something happened that pushed me over the edge. It was July 12th, a hot and sticky monsoon morning. The smell of wet earth filled the air. I was packing my bag for college when Dad exploded over something small. Mom had forgotten to put an extra handkerchief in his briefcase. Yes, a handkerchief. He threw the entire briefcase across the room. Papers scattered everywhere. My heart stopped. Mom rushed to pick everything up, whispering apologies. And then he raised his hand. For the first time in my life, I thought he would actually hit her. But he didn't. His hand hovered in the air, trembling, before he dropped it and stormed out of the house. The door slammed so hard the windows rattled. I wanted to scream, to chase after him, to tell him he couldn't treat her like this. But instead, I just stood there, silent. That silence became my biggest shame. Later that day, I told Mom, "You don't deserve this. Why don't you leave him?" Her eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. A sad, broken smile. "Arjun, this is how marriage works here. You sacrifice. You endure. One day you'll understand." Understand? I couldn't. I didn't want to. From that moment, my home stopped feeling like home. I started spending longer hours outside, at college, in cafes, even just wandering the crowded streets of Delhi with no destination. Anywhere felt safer than my own house. But the more distance I created, the more guilt I felt. Because here was the truth. While I could escape, Mom couldn't. She was trapped, and no one cared. Every evening, I returned home to the same sight. Mom serving dinner silently, Dad watching TV, complaining about politics, cricket, the neighbors, anything to make himself feel powerful. And every night, I lay in bed wondering, is this my future too? Will I grow up to be like him? I wanted to believe I was different, but the fear never left me. And then something shifted. One evening, after work, I overheard Mom crying in the kitchen. She thought I was asleep. Her sobs were muffled, but the sound cut through me like a knife. That was the moment I made a decision. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I promised myself I would get us out of this. Of course, I had no money, no plan, nothing but a part-time job that barely paid for my bus fare and college fees. But in that moment, hope flickered. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, something happened that changed everything. Something I never expected. Remember how I said I thought things couldn't get worse? Well, they did. It started small. My father began checking on me more, where I went, who I talked to, how long I stayed out. At first, I thought maybe he cared. But no, it wasn't care. It was control. The same control he used on my mom. He was now pointing at me. Why are you late again, Arjun? Who were you with? Don't think I don't know how boys waste their time. He said it like I was guilty of some crime. I tried to keep calm. I tried to remind myself that I was studying, that I was working part-time to pay my own way. But in his eyes, I was just another disappointment. And then came the night that burned into my memory forever. It was August 2nd. The electricity had gone out, common in Delhi during monsoon season. We sat in the living room with only the flicker of a candle. Mom served dinner quietly. Dal, rice, and a few chapatis. Dad took one bite. Too much salt, he growled. I swear my blood boiled. Dad, it's fine. I blurted out before I could stop myself. It tastes good. Why do you always have to complain? The room went silent. His eyes locked on me, sharp and cold. What did you just say? I froze. My heart raced. For a second, I thought he might actually hit me. But instead, he slammed his hand on the table. The candle nearly went out. You think you could talk back to me? In my house. Eating food I pay for. Mom tried to calm him. Please, Rajesh, don't. Stay out of this, he snapped at her. And then he turned back to me. You want to act like a man? Then start paying the bills. Until then, you keep your mouth shut. That night, I didn't sleep. His words echoed in my head. But here's the twist. Instead of breaking me, they fueled me. The next morning, I went straight to my part-time job at a small art supply store and asked for extra shifts. I didn't care if it meant less time to study, less time to draw. I needed money. Not for him. For Mom. For me. For freedom. But the more hours I worked, the more he noticed. Why are you always gone? What are you hiding? Are you ashamed of your family? No, Dad. I wasn't ashamed of my family. I was ashamed of him. And then, something unexpected happened. One evening, I came home late. Past 10 p.m. Mom was waiting at the door, wringing her hands. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. Before I could ask, she whispered, Your father was furious. He said if you keep coming home late, he'll throw you out. Throw me out. A part of me wanted to laugh. Good, I thought. Throw me out. At least then I could breathe. But when I looked at her face, scared, trembling, I realized she wasn't afraid for me. She was afraid of being left alone with him. And that's when I understood my fight wasn't just about me. It was about her too. I started noticing little details I had ignored before. The way her hands shook when she poured tea. The way she apologized even when she wasn't wrong. The way she smiled at neighbors, hiding everything behind that smile. Every day felt like living in two worlds. Outside, I was Arjun, the college student, the aspiring artist, the boy with friends and a future. Inside, I was Arjun, the silent witness to a war no one else could see. But then came the breaking point. It was September 15th. I was preparing for my state exams, books piled on my desk, sweat dripping down my back from the heat. Suddenly, I heard shouting from the living room. I rushed out. Dad was standing over Mom, yelling about a misplaced bill. A piece of paper. That's all it was. But his voice was so loud, so vicious, that I felt something snap inside me. Enough, I shouted. Both of them froze. For the first time, I didn't care about the consequences. Stop talking to her like that. She's not your servant. She's your wife. She's my mother. You don't get to treat her like garbage. His face turned red. He took a step toward me. And then he smiled. A slow, dangerous smile. You think you're a hero now? You think she'll thank you? Watch Arjun. She'll always stand by me, not you. And here's the painful part. He was right. Mom grabbed my arm, pulled me back, and whispered, Please don't fight him. Please. I looked in her eyes and saw not anger, not betrayal, but fear. Fear that if I pushed harder, things would get worse. So I stepped back. Again. That night, I lay in bed, my fist clenched. Rage burned inside me, but so did confusion. How do you save someone who doesn't want to be saved? And that's when I realized, maybe saving her wasn't my job. Maybe the only person I could save was myself. The next morning, I started making a plan. I began setting aside money, little by little, skipping meals at college, walking instead of taking the bus, anything to save. My goal wasn't just to move out. It was to give Mom a choice if she ever decided to take it. But time was running out, because on October 1st, something happened that forced me to act sooner than I had ever planned. And it was the moment that changed everything. October 1st, a date burned in my memory. It was a Sunday morning, the air heavy with the smell of rain-soaked earth. I woke up to the sound of shouting, again. Only this time, it was different, louder, angrier. I rushed into the living room. Dad was standing over Mom, holding her phone in his hand. His face twisted in fury. Who is this? Who are you talking to? He barked, waving the phone like a weapon. I froze. It was just her cousin from Lucknow. She'd been planning to visit during Diwali. But in my father's world, even that was unacceptable. He threw the phone against the wall. It shattered. Mom gasped. And then he did something I'll never forget. He shoved her. Hard. She stumbled back, nearly falling into the corner of the dining table. Something inside me snapped. I ran forward, grabbed his arm, and shouted, "Stop! Don't you dare touch her again." For a moment, we stood face to face. His eyes boring into mine refusing to look away. And then, he laughed. A cold, bitter laugh. You? You think you can stop me? His words cut deeper than any slap could. But this time, I didn't back down. I'm done being silent. If you ever touch her again, I swear I'll call the police. The room fell silent. Even he wasn't expecting that. For a second, I thought he'd explode. But instead, he stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. Mom collapsed into a chair, trembling. I knelt beside her. We can't live like this anymore. Please, let's go. Even if it's just for a few days. But she shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Arjun, this is my life. I can't leave him. Not after all these years. People will talk. Where would I go? Her words broke me more than his fists ever could. Because in that moment, I realized something painful. She wasn't ready to leave. Maybe she never would be. But I was. That night, I packed a small bag, just clothes, my sketchbook, and the little money I'd saved. Before I left, I went to her room. She was asleep, her face pale in the dim light. I placed a note on her bedside table. Mom, I love you. I'm not abandoning you. I just can't breathe here anymore. If you ever need me, call me. I'll come. Always. And then, I walked out. The streets were quiet, the air cool. For the first time in years, I felt both terrified and free. Life didn't magically get better. I rented a tiny room near my college. The paint on the walls was peeling, the mattress was thin, and the fan rattled at night. But it was mine. I worked extra shifts, studied when I could, and started drawing again. Slowly, the creativity I thought I'd lost came back. I still visited Mom when I could. She never talked about that night. She never left him. But sometimes, when no one was watching, she'd slip me extra food, press money into my hand, and whisper, "I'm proud of you." Those words kept me going. And here's the truth. I don't know how this story ends. Maybe one day, she'll find the strength to walk away. Maybe she won't. But I do know this. Breaking the cycle starts with me. So I'll ask you this. If you saw someone you love trapped in a toxic marriage, would you fight to pull them out? Or would you save yourself first?